Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the big Modi-Putin power play. Remember, in about an hour's time, President Putin of Russia will be touching down at the Palam Technical Airport here in Delhi. He will drive straight down to 7 LKM, the residence of the Prime Minister, where there will be a private dinner followed by restricted talks between the Prime Minister and the President. Of course, President Putin is in India for a day and a half. He will be co-chairing the 23rd Annual India-Russia Summit, something that first began when he first became president way back in the year 2000. He will now be co-chairing the 23rd edition of the annual summit. Remember, this is the first time that he's traveling to India since the Russia-Ukraine war began. That was more than 3 years ago. But it is coming at an important geopolitical context, at a time of great geopolitical flux. There is this great power competition that is going on between America and Russia. And India, for the last 20-25 years, has maintained its strategic balance, its strategic autonomy by having good relations with both America and Russia. Right now, though, Russia and America are at loggerheads, but for India, both these countries are equally important for our long-term goals and growth. Let's look at the current state of the partnership between India and Russia and India and the United States. On the one hand, the US, of course, is India's largest trade partner. India exports more than $80 billion to the United States. Russia, on the other hand, has the second largest trade deficit for India on the back of a large amount of Russian oil and gas, more than 60 billion being imported by India. At the same time, the US has imposed 50% tariff on India, 25% reciprocal tariffs and 25% for oil tariffs for importing Russian oil. On the other side, 80% of India's imports from Russia happen to be Russian energy, whether it is oil or gas. The US, on the other hand, has been imposing stricter and stricter rules for labor mobility, particularly H-1B. Just earlier this morning, there were new rules that have been tightened for H-1B as well as H-4, which are dependent visas. Russia, on the other hand, is going to welcome talent from India. There's going to be a labor mobility agreement that will be signed tomorrow amongst the 10 government-to-government agreements. Also, one cannot ignore the historic 10-year defense pact that was signed between India and the US. This was on the back of the previous 10-year pact expiring. It also involved several aspects ranging from countering China's influence in the Indo-Pacific, the Quad. However, Trump seems to have gone cold on that. Russia, on the other hand, is India's top weapon supplier. Even today, 36% of India's new weapons imports comes from Russia. And if you were to add spare parts, supplies, maintenance, etc., more than 60% of India's weapons inventory has a Russian origin. I want to go across to a piece of breaking news that's just coming through. Government sources on the expected outcomes of President Putin's visit. It is largely going to be in the economic realm, in the trade arena. So they're expecting a lot of agreements around trade and economic cooperation. President Putin is traveling with a large group of business persons. In fact, 75 CEOs. We're given to understand it's the largest business delegation that President Putin is traveling with. The aim is to increase India's exports to Russia and to narrow the trade deficit. Aman Sharma, our political editor, has more details on this. So what is the hindrance in trying to get more Indian exports into Russia so far, and why does the government hope that will change with this visit?
Well, Zaka, what top government sources are telling us that economic cooperation is on the top of the agenda of this particular visit of the Russian president. You know, a lot has been spoken about the defense cooperation on both sides, but this time economic cooperation is going to take, the biggest importance, because we have a big trade deficit with Russia, nearly $69 billion worth trade between both countries, but India's exports to Russia are less than $5 billion. And that is what India is trying to improve, that our exports increase to Russia. Russia also, we believe, is very interested in getting, increasing Indian exports to Russia. What we are learning is that large number of business persons, business delegation is coming along with Mr. Putin. India is expecting to improve its trade deficit, and multiple avenues are being worked to increase these Indian exports to Russia. This could be in the fields of pharma, automobiles, agricultural products, as well as marine products. This is what India is going to stress on, and this could reflect in the kind of government-to-government agreements maybe which are signed between both the countries during this visit. Top government sources also saying that Indian businesses and products will get a bigger market in Russia once these agreements are signed. This will also boost job creation, helpful for our farmers as well. Something that India has stoutly defended when it comes to the Indo-US trade deal. Also, India wanted to stoutly defend the interests of its farmers. Top government sources saying that this increasing exports of agricultural products to Russia will in fact is in the for the well-being of our farmers. We could see an agreement maybe around that. Also multiple agreements and MOUs. Zaka top government sources are saying in the field of shipping, healthcare, fertilizers and connectivity, as well as people-to-people contact kind of MOUs, cultural MOUs could be signed between both the sides. All this is on the agenda, mobility partnerships, scientific collaborations as well. So I think the top agenda, Zaka, this time seems to be economic cooperation and increasing India's exports to Russia.
Absolutely. The trade deficit has been a point of concern on the back of course, a lot of Russian oil being imported by India over the last 3 years. We'll see how that plays out. I want to open this up to our guests here in our studios. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, is joining us. Meera Shankar, former ambassador to the United States, is joining us. Brahma Chalani, strategic affairs expert, is there with us as well. Julia Krill is an international affairs expert, and Tatiana Kukreva is a senior Russian journalist who's also joining us on the broadcast this evening. Ambassador Dogra, let me start with you. What is the impediment? What's the problem in India exporting more to Russia? You've been on the Russia desk, so what's historically been the problem?
Well, on the positive side, let me start on the positive side. There's a lot of empathy, both at the people-to-people level and bureaucratic and political level. So, ideally speaking, there should not be any impediment. But practically, there are lots of impediments. Let's start with the travel, for example. It's not easy to get a business or tourist visa to Russia. Second is the language issue. It's easier to go to English-speaking countries and export. Third is the issue of lack of knowledge about what the other country wants. We do not have any correspondent, to my knowledge, in Russia. We have a whole lot of correspondents in UK, USA, and so on. But if you had a business correspondent, say in Moscow, who traveled around and informed about what is happening, what is the need for the Russian market, it would help a lot. Third is the travel generally.
Okay.
If there is people-to-people movement, then naturally it facilitates trade. Much more than that, I think what is also needed is that there should be some kind of a recognition in Russia that if Indians can develop Gulf through their contribution,
correct.
If Indians can develop the Silicon Valley through their contribution, if Indians can head multinational corporations all over the world, why can't the same thing be done through their contribution in Russia? There's not even a single Russian who can be counted.
It's interesting, one of the things that they will be signing tomorrow is a labor mobility agreement. I believe there's only 70,000 Indians living and working in Russia right now. You compare that to over 5 million Indian Americans. Tatiana is joining us from Moscow. So Tatiana, President Putin will be arriving, I believe will be touching down in less than an hour. He, I believe, will be traveling with the largest Russian business delegation that has ever visited India. What can we expect in terms of tangibles, in terms of, big agreements that will be announced tomorrow?
Well, Zaka, we've heard that there are over 15 agreements on the books, and just as it has been said, it is going to be largely focusing on the economic cooperation. The president has already said that this is a very special, a unique relationship, the relationship that has already helped change a lot of things on the international arena, as well as, just the bilaterally. Because taking into account that over 90% of transactions between Moscow and New Delhi is already conducted, for instance, in national currencies. There are so many things from pharma to defense to space exploration to nuclear energy that all of them are on the table. The big corporations are traveling within this delegation. So it is going to be a very fruitful visit, that's for sure.
Tatiana, give me a moment. I want to go across to this piece of breaking news that's coming through as well. A top source has told CNN News 18 that Prime Minister Modi is likely to go to the airport to receive President Putin. That's going to be in about an hour's time. I want to go straight across to Siddhant, who's got information on this. So this is a rare gesture. The Prime Minister usually doesn't go to receive visiting heads of state. I think very few times he's done that. Once with Barack Obama, once with Netanyahu, once with former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. So this is a courtesy, an extension of the respect and the depth of this relationship. What are you picking up, Siddhant?
Well, that's right, Zaka. In fact, this is a very rare gesture. And since President Putin is coming after the gap of 5 years for the 23rd India-Russia annual summit, so now there is an update that in all likelihood, Prime Minister Modi could go to the airport to receive President Putin. Zaka, till afternoon, the sources were telling us that the minister in waiting for President Putin is EMS Jaishankar, who is equivalent to Russian First Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov, who received Prime Minister Modi when he visited Moscow last year. But now we're getting to know, in fact, sources are telling us that Prime Minister Modi could likely be going to the airport to receive President Putin. We are still awaiting official word from the government, but sources are indicating that Prime Minister will go himself to receive President Putin.
All right, Siddhant, we'll leave it at that. We'll see as and when that happens. In an hour's time, President Putin expected to touch down at the Palam airport in New Delhi. I want to go back to our guests. Ambassador Meera Shankar is there with us. Mr. Brahmachalani is also there with us. Julia Kirill is with us as well. Ambassador Shankar, let me, I mean, obviously, you know, one of the global capitals where this is going to be closely watched, this visit, the outcomes, the body language, what is said, what is not said, is going to be Washington, particularly the current occupant of the White House. How do you see America, and in particular President Trump, reacting to what we're expected to see over the next 24 or 30 hours or so?
I don't think I want to predict how President Trump is going to react. But clearly, the US effort has been to pressurize India to reduce its relationship with Russia. You know, the sanctions on Russian oil imports, the Katsa sanctions on arms imports from Russia. The point is that the relationship with Russia has been an ongoing one for a very long time. It's been a steady partnership. It went through a difficult period after the Soviet Union collapsed. And the economic relationship in particular, which was dependent on the rupee-ruble trade, virtually collapsed in the wake of a shift to dollar trade. But in recent years, we've seen a concerted effort to seek to build synergies between the two countries. And this has actually acquired momentum because of the West's efforts to pressurize and isolate Russia in the wake of the Ukrainian conflict. You see, before that, India's efforts to explore energy imports from Russia or even diamond imports directly had faced a wall because Russia was oriented towards the West. Their elite aspired to the West, even though strategically they were seeking greater autonomy, having felt that the West had taken advantage of them during the period of their weakness. Okay. Still at the level of elite, they were oriented towards the West. It is now that the West has tried to squeeze and isolate Russia, that Russia has turned more towards Asia. And that's not without its problems for India, because that includes China as one of the major interlocutors for Russia, but also India, because Russia would certainly not want to be exclusively dependent on China. Now, for India, this is going to be challenging because we would like to have an autonomous strategic space to navigate, particularly in the light of the kind of road bumps we are facing in the relationship with the US.
No, but that is the problem, isn't it? Professor Brahmachalani has been talking about this for a number of years now. I mean, strategic autonomy was what India believed in and continues to believe in. But now Trump is basically saying that there is a price to pay for that strategic autonomy. And that is in the form of these 50% tariffs, Professor Chalani. I mean, the question is, can India absorb that?
You raise an important question, Zaka. At a time when US policy toward India has turned erratic and even punitive under President Trump, I think the symbolism of President Putin's reception in New Delhi could not have been more pointed. The fact that Prime Minister Modi is going to receive Putin at the airport really underscores how India is rediscovering Russia as a reliable long-term partner. And by hosting Putin, India is sending an unmistakable message to Washington that India is a sovereign power with global choices, unwilling to accept the Western imposed with us or against us binary, and determined to chart its own course. So that message is clearly being sent to Washington, whether Trump likes it or not. Whatever his response might be, the fact is that his policies and actions have resulted in a situation where the US risks losing India at its own peril. It has pushed India away. It has punished India so harshly that the US tariffs on India are higher than the US tariffs on China.
Exactly.
Imagine, the US-India partnership was built on countering China's expansionist rise. But today, the US is treating India more harshly than even China. And it's against this background that India is strengthening its Russia channel. And for a simple reason. Washington has allowed the US-India relationship to become far more fragile than it ever should have been. But I think there is also an important message that President Putin is sending. You know that how US policy, US-led policy, has pushed Russia closer to China, including by isolating Russia from the Western markets. And Putin's visit to New Delhi signals very clearly that Russia has options beyond China, that India is a very important partner of Russia. And that's the reason why it's President Putin who's emphasizing the economic and trade dimension. Because how do you reduce reliance on China? By expanding economic ties with India.
With India. So the problem with that trade relationship, at least up until now, has been that the balance of that trade is heavily skewed in favor of Russia, by and large because of the oil imports that India has been making from Russia since this war began. But now Indian oil companies, both public and private, have said that they will reduce their import of Russian oil. How much they do that by and how soon they do that by, I don't know. We will see as the months go by. But Julia Krill, I want to take forward what Professor Chalani said and what Ambassador Meera Shankar said earlier, that if President Trump the last time he tweeted when Prime Minister Modi, President Putin and President Xi Jinping met on the sidelines of the SCO summit in Tianjin, he said, and he tweeted, I think we've lost India to deep, dark China. I expect him to say something of that similar nature when President Putin arrives here in India, and there's going to be a lot of pictures of Bonhomie, a lot of words exchanged and agreements exchanged and so on. Trump will feel, A, left out, and B, that, there is this new dynamic that's shaping up between Russia and India at a time when he's been trying really hard to get Mr. Putin to agree to a ceasefire. But then, as Professor Chalani said, Trump has no one else but himself to blame for it.
Yes, you're totally right. For the United States, pulling India out of the BRICS, pulling India out of the Russia-China alliances is a strategic goal, because India is still one democracy in the party of the authoritarian states. So United States tried the tick. Now they have to probably try the carrot and try to use the playbook of Vladimir Putin, who right now, this week, already rejected another peace proposal coming from the Witkoff. So he needs to find more money to keep funding the war in Ukraine, to keep advancing in Donbas region, to keep trying to get the win on the battlefield, and to pressure Ukraine into complete concession of all territories. At the same time, European Union has already voted this week to completely stop purchasing Russian gas already once and for all. So for Vladimir Putin, it's extremely important right now to find new source of revenue, and India couldn't be a better partner because
No, but the only problem there, ma'am, is that India wants to export more to Russia, and India is tapering down its single biggest item of import from Russia, which is Russian oil. So it'll be more, Russia having to pay for buying Indian stuff rather than the other way around, as you suggest.
Yes, indeed. But at the same time, if you're looking at what Russia has been doing with so many countries around the world, is bringing foreign nationals to Russia under the pretense that they will be working in Russia, studying in Russia, and then sending them to the battlefield in Ukraine. How do we know that this won't happen with Indian citizens who will be under the new
There
labor agreement?
last I checked, and we can check with Tatiana as well, last I checked, there were a handful of Indians who had gone to fight on behalf of the Russian army. I think about 15 or 16 of them. I'm not sure about the exact number. But Tatiana, I think the larger point that's being made is that the breadth and the depth of the relationship between India and Russia has been confined to two areas. One, defense, and that's been a long-standing part of the relationship. And now, in the last few years, because of the war, on the energy side. But beyond that, there is no breadth or depth of this relationship compared to, let's say, the India-US relationship.
Well, Zaka, I find that to be quite superficial view on Julia's part, but then again, it just is inevitable considering, her background. First and foremost, let's go through some of the bases. That she says that pulling India out of BRICS should be or could be a priority for the US. In the meantime, we've heard it many, many times that Prime Minister Modi is looking for strategic autonomy, first of all, but also geopolitical sovereignty for India, which means that it is for India to decide which blocs it wants to be part of. And the suggestion that it is, that America can sway the nation that is, that has come already so many years ago, has come into its own, into essentially American-dominated blocs, is by default a wrong assumption to make, In the meantime, we're missing so many things here. I believe that it is a mistake altogether to kind of frame this visit with the context of the Ukrainian conflict. Let's not forget that, first of all, Russian-Indian relations span over so many decades.
Correct.
There is a lot of history. There's a lot of cooperation there. Yes, there's a lot of cooperation in the domain of the defense, and it is going to continue, first of all, because the huge advantage of Russian defense technology is the fact that it has been tested in real operational situations. So it is...
All right, Tatiana, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we can go live to our reporter now who's joining us from the airport, the Palam Technical Airport, where most VVIPs, dignitaries land. Let me go across to Arun Danta, who's joining us. You can see those live pictures there behind him. Arun, what time are we expecting President Putin's plane to land? There's a lot of chatter and speculation now that the Prime Minister might actually go to the airport to receive President Putin. What are you picking up?
Well, that's right, Zaka. Prime Minister's protocol here in place, and therefore we can say that Prime Minister Modi is going to come here. He's breaking the protocol to welcome the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let me quickly show you a glimpse of the Palam Technical Airport. If we can see it actually, that's the area, that's the gate right on your screen at this point. I would request my camera person Rama Shankar if he can just zoom in there on the gate because that's the exit gate from where you will see the convoy of both Prime Minister Modi and of course Putin will be coming out. So this is the Palam Technical Airport. This is the place where Prime Minister Modi will be arriving in a short while from now, of course, to wait Putin, and then of course both of them will be going to 7 LKM. Remember, Zaka, 7:30 is the time when a private dinner has been planned by Prime Minister Modi for the Putin. So from here at the airport, they will straight away go to 7 LKM for that private dinner. And also remember, Zaka, this is not for the first time. We've covered even previous visits of Prime Minister Modi to the airport to welcome the dignitaries. The most latest one was the visit of Amir of Qatar in this year itself, when Prime Minister Modi had again, broken the protocol and had come here to welcome the Qatar of Amir. And in fact, in 2015 also, for the first time, when Barack Obama had come here for the Republic Day as a guest, even then Prime Minister Modi had come here. Even during the Sheikh Hasina's visit in 2017, Donald Trump's visit in 2022 to Ahmedabad, there also Prime Minister Modi. So there have been very few instances when Prime Minister Modi had himself come to the airport, and today is one such occasion where he's coming here to welcome Vladimir Putin. And 6:35 is the time which we are told that when the flight of Vladimir Putin is going to land here at the Palam Technical Airport. Then straight away, within 10 minutes, he'll be leaving for the 7 LKM. And the distance from here to LKM is barely 10 to 15 kilometers. So it will not take much time. By 7:15, they'll be at the LKM. And then, of course, 7:30, that private dinner in the similar way as we witnessed last year when Prime Minister Modi was in Russia, special dinner with Putin there in his mansion.
Correct.
Yes,
he went to his summer house, and then, of course, later that year, they met in Kazan as well on the sidelines of the SCO summit. They've had multiple conversations this year as well. I think it's a sort of coming full circle in that sense, because the annual India-Russia summit was started by President Putin in the year 2000 with Prime Minister Vajpayee at that time. This is the 23rd edition for which he's coming down to India, the first in almost 4 years, in fact more than 4 years since the Russia-Ukraine war began. So it's going to be a momentous next couple of days here in New Delhi as President Putin touches down in the next 40 minutes or so, and we'll have you covered all through our evening primetime coverage right here on CNN News 18. Stay right here. It's a summit that will redefine geopolitics.
Two leaders, one visit, every moment counts.
Every deal, every word, every step decoded.
Your front row seat
to a headline-making trip from Moscow
to New Delhi. We've got it covered.
Diplomatic power unfolds this week.
Putin-Modi power play.
Exclusive, exhaustive, extensive.
This
the problem is that there doesn't seem to be any solution to that war. And I'll ask Mr. Ivan, who's joining us from Kiev. Mr. Ivan, this week, Mr. Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's special envoy, Mr. Jared Kushner, who's his son-in-law, who's also been mandated to try and find some kind of a solution, a ceasefire to the Ukraine war, was sent there. Again, they spent 5 hours with President Putin, some of his top foreign policy aides. They haven't quite achieved a breakthrough yet. So what will it take for this war to end? Because, like I said, India has now skin in this game because India is being penalized for importing oil from Russia.
Greetings to the studio, greetings to all guests and of course all audience. Of course we understand that attempt to make some peace, as we understand, failed because there was no immediate meeting between special Trump envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner with European partners and Ukrainian partners immediately after visit in Moscow. Today evening we expect a meeting between Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner with Ukrainian delegation in Miami in the United States of America. But frankly speaking, we don't see a prospect of any peace solution. So Russia still wants to win this war. Even the spokesman of President Putin said that they want to achieve targets that they initially want. It's actually, from Ukrainian perspective, it's demolition of Ukraine and killing of Ukrainian people or so. As for me, previous week Russian drone hit a residential building in front of my house, so I thought that it was Putin attempt to kill me personally. That's why, of course, for me it's hard to wait something good from Putin, and especially taking into account the previous meeting between President Putin and the Prime Minister Modi in Moscow, when Russia hit the largest children's hospital in Kiev. That's why we always have a fear that Putin always like to make some serious hits in moments.
Mr. Ivan, give me one moment, because we're getting live pictures from the War Memorial here in central Delhi. This is the Indian Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, and his Russian counterpart, Mr. Bilateral, both of whom are there. They will be taking part in this wreath-laying ceremony, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Ambassador Dogra is here with us as well. I believe after this ceremony, they will go and have their own sort of bilateral meeting, the two defense ministers. Obviously, defense is a big component of this relationship, Ambassador. So what should we look out for? Because there's a lot of chatter around, S-400s and S-500s and Sukhoi 57, etc. And defense has been a big component of the India-Russia relationship. Do you see any big-ticket announcements, any big-ticket takeaways on the defense side as we see these pictures from the War Memorial? Let me start with you, Ambassador Dogra, because the overall geopolitical context is critical. I mean, there is the Ukraine war that's been going on for almost 4 years now. It's going to be 4 years next February. Prime Minister has said, I think as far back as 2022 September, this is not the era of war, but that war is still continuing. And willy-nilly, India is also now paying a price because of this import of Russian oil. India is the only country that's been tariffed by Trump for these oil tariffs. What is the big broad picture as President Putin touches down in India in a couple of hours' time?
Well, I think the list of your guests says it all, because the broad picture is going to be watched all over the world, especially in the Western world, Washington in particular, then of course Ukraine for its own reasons, and Russia because it's an important player, and the Russian president is going to be here. But the context is much bigger than just this visit, because the background to this visit and what may happen because of this visit is important. There is a state of flux in international affairs presently. There's no fixed unipolar world any longer. And despite Trump's desire to have a G2, the fact is that it has not happened, and it may not happen, because there are other powers in the world, especially India, which wants its place under the sun. So the meeting may not.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. In a few minutes from now, Russian President Vladimir Putin will arrive in New Delhi for his 30-hour visit, one which marks possibly his most globally watched India visit. Putin's first official visit to India since the Ukraine war began, and after Trump unleashed the global tariff tyranny over Russian oil. For India, hosting Putin now signals a reaffirmation of its strategic autonomy. Despite measures imposed by the US linked to Moscow's oil, New Delhi continues to put its interests first, prioritizing energy affordability, but also an independent world view. From Moscow's perspective, this visit reaffirms the notion that India is an equal, indispensable partner to Russia, even with Beijing in the picture. For New Delhi and Moscow alike, the stakes are high, but so is their shared history. As the world watches, could this Delhi rendezvous prove to be a defining moment in shaping the contours of geopolitics to come? At a time when global fault lines are being redrawn, this visit serves as a diplomatic message to the West. India will not be cowed down by sanctions or geopolitical coercion. Rather, it intends to chart an independent foreign policy, reinforcing its decades-old relationship with Russia while balancing ties with the West. If the suggestion was that India is walking a tightrope, the message from New Delhi at least is, we are free from any concern, we are friends to all, enemies to none. Take it or leave it. That and more coming up with our special guest joining tonight. But here's why the West's dislike for Russia, for Vladimir Putin, doesn't quite trickle down in India. It doesn't translate the same way. This is the major reason why India and the West haven't been able to see eye to eye or haven't been on the same page as far as this relationship is concerned, because the historical underpinning of India-Russia relation runs deep. First and foremost, India and Russia share deep trust. India views USSR as a crisis-time ally from 1971 war to UNSC vetoes on Kashmir resolution, while the West remembers USSR as a Cold War enemy. Moreover, unlike the West, Russia has never sanctioned or pressurized or lectured India, and this is important for India and given its non-aligned stance. Over decades, Russia has supplied reliable, affordable weapons when others refuse, and that continues to be the case. While the West sees Russia through a democracy-autocracy binary, India sees it through strategic, not ideological lens. Furthermore, from entertainment to education, India and Russia share deep cultural ties. This very soft power legacy shapes how India and Indians perceive Russia with more warmth and actually not the hostility that the West may have towards Putin today or from the past as well. In fact, apart from arms and trade, cultural tie is about so much more. From Russia's love for Indian movies to scholarships and tourism, plenty of factors have helped the two nations maintain strong relations. Indian movies have been a part of Russian culture for over 70 years, surviving wars, political changes, even the rise of Hollywood. The love for Indian movies in Russia goes back to the 1950s, from Raj Kapoor's Avara to Mithun Chakrabarti's Disco Dancer, which became the most successful film at the box office in 1984. Another reason why India and Russia cultural ties are so strong is the student exchange. Remember, Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center was established in 1989 in Moscow and has been mandated with the task of maintaining India's cultural relations with Russia. About 20 Russian institutions regularly teach Hindi to 1,500 students in Russia. Apart from Hindi, languages such as Tamil, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, Urdu, Sanskrit and Pali are all taught in Russian institutions. Furthermore, there is general interest amongst Russians in Indian dance, music, yoga and Ayurveda. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, the number of Indian students in Russia has increased over the years. It now stands at over 31,000 as of 2024. On the other hand, India offers a wide range of scholarships to Russian students. The Indian Council for Cultural Relations offers 4 types of scholarships to Russian students. And let's not forget, Russian literature is still taught in Indian universities with dedicated Russian studies departments. In fact, the works of renowned Russian authors like Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy and Anton Chekhov have all been widely read, even adapted in India. This is why possibly the hate that the West may have for Russia and Putin doesn't translate in India. And the big debate that's coming up today, even as India rolls out this red carpet for Putin, the Prime Minister himself is expected to receive him at the airport. Is this not a strategic message to the West as clear as it can get?
The energy cooperation, because of the US sanctions on Goyal and Rajnath, there has been a dip in the imports of Russian energy to India. Perhaps both leaders could also be speaking about exploring more routes to continue this cooperation.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh hold a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart at the Manekshaw Center. This will be a key moment for formal discussion on future defense cooperation, including S-400 follow-on units and potential procurement of the S-500 and also Su-57.
Vladimir Putin refers to Prime Minister Narendra Modi as my dear friend.
Yeah.
And Modi has referred to Putin and Russia as an all-weather ally and a trusted friend as well.
All right, let's go across to some of our experts joining us. Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti is former Indian ambassador to Bangladesh and former secretary of the MEA. I'll also be joined by Tatiana Kukhareva, who's a senior Russian journalist with us. Elena Chernova is head of Foreign Affairs, International Division, Association of Innovative Regions of Russia, also known as the AIRR. Pinak Ranjanji, I begin with you. The latest update that we have is, as some had expected, the Prime Minister is going to be going to the airport to receive, quote-unquote, his friend, long-time ally, Vladimir Putin. What message does this send? Because a lot of people, were worried that India is walking a tightrope. But in the kind of reception that India is planning, and with the PM being there at the airport, it seems like a message is not of a tightrope, but of a very clear stand from India that we are not afraid of the message that the West is receiving from this visit.
Well, firstly, let me add a personal thing that I have received President Putin when I was Chief of Protocol at least 3 times when I was in the ministry.
Right.
And I remember those occasions as well. And on some of them, the Prime Minister did go to receive President Putin. So I'm not surprised that the Prime Minister is going. This happens when you want to welcome a close friend. The Prime Minister, as we say, breaks protocol. Because the protocol is a template which is normally followed, but sometimes you don't follow it to express a special kind of a sort of a welcome, which is what I think Prime Minister will be doing. And I'm not surprised because he's done it before, and I think President Putin has been, this is I think I don't know which number visit this is, 11th visit I think, after we signed the special strategic agreement in 2000. So, but it's after 4 years. So naturally, this is a very memorable occasion. And given the international situation today, it becomes even more important that...
which is why I ask, PM going there, quote-unquote, breaking protocol again. From India, the message clearly is that, we are not so worried about what the West takes from this.
Look, I don't subscribe to that. We are not sending a message to anybody. We are building a stronger foundation to a very strong bilateral relationship that we have had with Russia for decades. I mean, this is not today's relationship, and hence we are only trying to rebuild or perhaps add more blocks to that relationship that we have had for many years. So I don't think we are trying to send a message. If anybody else wants to read a message, that's their business. Right?
That's their business.
And we are not really, concerned about that. We are building and sending a message to the two countries and the people of the two countries also that we remain steadfast friends.
Yes. No, but let me then come to the the crux of the issue here. Ruslan Botnik is international affairs expert joining us, I believe, from Kiev in Ukraine. Also, Tara Karta, former director NSCS, is also with us. So, Ruslan, let me begin with you. Why is there a lack of understanding or an insistence against India's special and long-standing relationship with Russia, regardless of the situation in Ukraine? Why is the West either failing to get it or refusing to accept it?
I think there is this very clear understanding what is going on, but the West and of course Ukraine are not ready to accept this Indian position as something true or something balanced and something leveraged. So because the public demonstration of this absence of understanding, it's methods of influence, I think, for Indian position. I'm not fully agree with my previous colleague. I think this meeting with airport is a signal for the West, especially for United States, that India's side is not only ashamed by the Putin, but also making his independent policy positioning towards the United States, especially policy, because the United States imposed the trade tariffs to India because of cooperation with Russia. And now Indian Prime Minister is meeting Putin in so wide circumstances. It's a signal to the West, to the United States, that India is not going to be defeated, and India is not going to making some back steps even under the pressure from the West.
No, which is exactly why it seems like the West's insistence, as you put it, Ruslan, to not accept the Indian position, it's only self-defeatist. It's also, kind of souring the relationship, which was a burgeoning relationship between India and US and Europe, for example. But before I come to that, let me also go across to Tatiana, because to expect that India would completely upend its friendship and a time-tested friendship with Russia just because international situation has changed because of this war was always an irrational demand. And the West doesn't seem to get it.
Well, Shivani, I can't quite agree with you in terms of it being an irrational demand on the part of the West, because that would essentially mean that the West is ready to live in a non-Western dominated world.
Right.
It hasn't been. The playbook has changed. But to expect for any US president, we talk a lot about Donald Trump being irrational or being this and that, which in fact he's not. He's just much more straightforward than, his Democratic predecessor. To expect from any American president to willingly accept the fact that it's not an American-dominated world anymore and to accept India as an equal kind of partner and accept the fact that there are countries, and not just India, I mean, look at the Gulf region, the countries that are very, very straightforward about the fact that they want sovereignty, they want geopolitical sovereignty, they want, and they have every right to be at the table, at a round table, not at the table where the US is at the head of the table and dictating terms. The whole narrative of it being a message to the West suggests the fact that India needs to send some sort of a message. Even that in itself, in the root, kind of means that there is a message to be sent because they need to show something to the US and the West.
No, I get where you're coming from, but it is only realism that there was indeed a lot of pressure on India. You are aware of it. All of us here are aware of it, of the kind of pressure India has faced. And many expected it to buckle down because India has its own needs. It needs the US and the West as well. It cannot completely, disregard their sentiments or their concerns. But there was an expectation that India would buckle down. And I think the message from India clearly is that we haven't in the past, we're not going to in the future.
Oh, absolutely. But it's a very clear, very simple explanation because there was pressure all around. And, because simply put, because Europe had, because Europe did kind of crumble under that pressure.
Exactly.
And, but again, can we really compare countries like India to, say, Britain? Can we really compare the European struggling economies? And they are struggling. I mean, we need to face the facts. Again, the economic flagship of Europe, kind of the driver of economy in Europe, which used to be Germany, has been in economic decline for over 2 years now. And there we have India that has been growing. I mean, we need to redefine the playbook on an international level because even the suggestion, that we have the developed countries and then we have developing countries.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
The rules have changed though.
No, absolutely, Tarakarta. Of course, Tatiana is right in that. I mean, that indeed is the message that India is sending, right? That the West is not in the position to dictate terms to anybody anymore. Yes, India has its concerns and its needs and requirements. But one, we've never done diplomacy like this. And secondly, we're not going to start now when we're vying to become a $5 trillion economy. Ma'am, I think... Yes, go ahead.
I think I would go with what Ambassador said. See, both leaders are very similar in this in terms of having a very personal relationship. They see things through that lens. And Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Putin are known to have a very good relationship. This Prime Minister, I've been in his administration, he doesn't stand on protocol. When he wants to do something, he'll do it. So there's also a personal thing involved. The fact, finally, it remains that the US is your largest trading partner. I mean, we've got the most vibrant trade relationship with the US. That is not so with regard to Russia. Let's face facts. So it's not so much sending a message, but also an acknowledgement that Russia has stood by us, even recently. You remember when that Article 370, China tried their best to put it on the UN table and Russia blocked it. We've supported Russia. I mean, this is something we've done for years. It comes very naturally to the Indian establishment to back Russia because we really have nothing against each other. This is one of those rare relationships where you're not competing with each other at all. You, in fact, sort of support each other at various times. So in that kind of a relationship where there's a degree of comfort, I'm not saying everything is hunky-dory, it's not. There is a degree of comfort with each other, which is why we've also gone in for this, we can come to that later, this logistics agreement. That's the next step. So it makes a lot of sense.
So are you suggesting, Tarakata, that in that sense there is absolutely no trepidation, if that may be a strong word, in the Indian system, that there is going to be possibly more hit back from US or the West because of this visit?
Oh, I think there's a very clear-eyed realism that if you go in for any major defense deals, there will be a blowback. There's no two ways on that. Energy we've already cut down. It's already gone down by, I think, about 30%, the kind of energy we've been taking from Russia. But all of this comes back to the point which Prime Minister has been making, that it is in our interests that the Ukraine war has to end. You know, if that ends, then we can go forward with so many things. I mean, there's, apart from the very moral aspect of the thing that Ukraine needs a break. I mean, come on, enough is enough. Right? So apart from that, the fact is our own interests are affected by the war.
Okay. So I'll come back to what could be the consequences of what happens and what is likely to happen, not likely to happen during this visit. But Elena, I want you to come into this conversation. According to you, what do you think is the message that India is sending?
Speaking on today's official visit of Russian delegation and its level, including ministers, head of government cooperation, heads of Russian banks, we expect about 10 intergovernmental agreements and more than 15 contracts to be signed. And it's a strong signal to other world that we have our private interests in such spheres as high tech, like nuclear technologies, aerospace, payments, agri-technologies, biosafety, which shows that we don't need any yes from the rest of the world. As Russia and India had a trade volume over $70 billion, and it's exceeding, and we expect it to be more than $100 billion by 2030. So we have a very strong ties, not historically, but also in education, in high tech, in culture. It's a strong ties between our leaders, and we don't need any signal from the Western countries to straightforward in our contacts.
I want to go back across to Ruslan as well. Do you think that this realization has set in that, you know, the strategy of trying to publicly bully India is not going to work? You're going to have to work behind the scenes with India if you want to express your concerns and have them on the table. But the manner in which, for example, it was done recently, that certainly seems to have backfired. Do you think there's a sense in NATO countries about this?
Maybe, but I think we are still waiting some kind of political apologies from India in the West. What I mean? What am I mean? I mean that India, every time after such steps, after the meetings with Russia, with some agreements with Russia, India is trying to strengthen the connection with the West. So after this visit, I'm sure that India's government will try to make some maybe calls or plan some visits to the West, and even maybe some additional connections with Ukraine. It was so after the last visit of India's Prime Minister to the Russia, as you remember, then was visit to Ukraine. India is trying to leverage it to balance in geopolitical arena, because India is really non-alignment state which is providing its own independence international policy. But you are right, absolutely, that this old strategy of post-colonial strategy, when we have a very dominated power which is able to put any country in the world in a special position to blame it or to demand some kind of behavior. This time in the past, and now we are living in multipolar world when no one can really make a significant fatal pressure to anyone.
Exactly. And Pinak Ranjanji, what happened because of the explosion in the style of functioning of the US administration with Trump coming to power and all of this tariff that was going on, his aides talking about India in a very demeaning manner, almost trying to bully us, the problem that happened was that India was working towards a deeper strategic relationship with the US. I think that was the sense in New Delhi and the excitement in India that India and US are going to power through to a long-standing, very strategic relationship. But that public stance and posturing against India, it just completely spoiled the pitch.
Well, as I was saying, that the strategic autonomy means that we would like to build relations with everybody. And we were doing it with the US as well. And because India is not a country which will choose sides or will be allied with anybody in the traditional sense that the Americans accept alliance systems, etc. They call it the treaty alliance partner and things like that, or a non-NATO partner. So India was never in that position, but we have links, very strong links with all these countries. And there is no question that India is going to choose one or the other. We will build with everybody. That was the plan, and that's what India was doing. But as you said, this public, castigating of India, etc., and things like that, has backfired. And I think they should sit back and realize that this does not work with India. I have been through the nuclear negotiations, and I know how they tried to bully us, and it didn't work. So they should go back and read those files again as to what they tried and what didn't work. And maybe there is some other way of getting India to cooperate if they wish to change their policy. So I think this is a new kind of way that the American administration, led by Mr. Trump, is trying to test out a new kind of diplomacy. Call it what you like, disruptive diplomacy, guerrilla diplomacy, or all kinds of things can be, phraseology we can invent as diplomats. But the fact is, it's not going to work. Now, the question is, when will they realize it? That's for them to realize, because if they wish India to go down on its knees, they are living in a cloud cuckoo land, is what I would say. We are willing to adjust. We are willing to adjust with everybody. That's not the point. But the point is, you don't tell us to kneel down and say, hey, look,
this is what you have to do. Exactly.
That this is what you have to do. That's not going to happen. I don't know why such experienced people in America, maybe they are not so experienced, because this is a brand new lot which has come and they have no idea, I think. I don't know whether any of them have handled foreign policy ever before. And I know many of them. I have a lot of American friends and diplomats who are my friends, and I talk to them. And they themselves tell me, we are quite mystified how they are carrying on with this kind of.
Yes. Can I coin my own term? I think it's the Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of a diplomacy.
Call it what you like.
Or Johnny Rambo kind of a diplomacy. You come in and you're going to shoot everybody, and everybody's going to either going to die.
Shoot from the hip, yes.
All the bad guys will kneel in front of you. Tatiana, what do you think? How do we describe this diplomacy?
Well, obviously, there's one thing that you can't take away from Donald Trump, I think I even posted that somewhere, that, how he is extremely talented in being able to offend over 1 billion people, with one post.
Yes.
That is beyond me. That is truly a talent. But again, this is something that the president actually spoke about. Our president has spoke about that. That India has changed so much. It's taken. It's completely changed and come into its own, and not everybody kind of got the message. That there is a sense of kind of habit in talking down to countries that some Western states are just used to having them as, former colonies. And there is a sense that they have not yet quite fully understood that this era has passed. And just as you said in the package, before our panel, this is the foundation of this relationship, putting aside the fact that Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi share almost 25 years of a personal relationship, that the first time they met was, in 2001, I believe, then when Narendra Modi was the chief minister for Gujarat, right? But the fact that Russia was never a colonizer, it never spoke down to India, it was always a partner. So the difference in diplomacy is very, very clear. It was very, very clear from the very beginning. And we've come to a point of kind of no return. I mean, what Donald Trump does bluntly, Democrats do in a subtle manner, but they do it all the same.
Yeah, you're right. We don't really know what is a lesser evil sometimes, because people would argue that even a Democrat president would have tried to do exactly the same. Although under Biden, we did see the kind of bonhomie that we had never seen before as far as India-US relationship is concerned. Who knows? But certainly, and you talked about that one statement that upset 1 billion plus people, and that was the one on India-Pakistan ceasefire. And I think that one tweet has done so much damage to this relationship, and the insistence after that 20, 30 times. No Indian is ever going to agree on this, barring stray voices for political reasons. Every Indian is united as far as an India-Pakistan issue is concerned. But I believe we also have what is a flight path. All right, we'll go across to that in just a bit. But a reminder that the president is about to land in India minutes from now, shortly from now. And before I also go across to Elena one more time, Tatiana, very quickly, I wanted to get your understanding. You talked about that this is not the era where the West can dictate, but what PM Modi keeps saying is that it is also not an era for war. So what message on Ukraine do you think the Russian president would be expecting when he sits down with the Indian PM?
Look, again, I believe Ruslan actually mentioned this briefly, saying that that there was another proposal just rejected in Moscow, which is not the case. This meeting comes on the back of President Putin's meeting with Witkoff, and there is a negotiation ongoing. So we keep forgetting that part, that from the moment that Donald Trump actually rolled the red carpet for President Putin, which we also keep forgetting, we stigmatize something. We hear stigmatizing of Prime Minister Modi for coming to the airport because it's not apparently a good idea to have the Russian president in India. But we keep forgetting that there was an actual red carpet rolled out for him in Anchorage. I believe that this visit is not about Ukraine, plain and simple. And we need to understand that. There's a lot of economic cooperation, there's the nuclear power issue, and Russia has been at the head of nuclear technology around the world. This visit is about so much more
than just Ukraine. All right. Okay, I'll delve into this a little bit more. Let me just quickly take an update from my colleagues. Arun Dhata is joining us live from the Palam airport, where the president's plane is set to land. Siddhant Mishra is outside 7 LKM, the PM's residence, where there will be a private dinner and talks today. So, Arun, coming to you first up, what's the latest happening around you?
Well, that's right. I am right outside the Palam Technical Airport, and right behind me, if you can see, this is the gate of the entry gate of the Palam Technical Airport, and this is the place. And in fact, you can see this vehicle. In fact, it means that Prime Minister Modi is about to arrive here. You can see there is no traffic movement on that side near the gate. 2 minutes back, there were vehicles which were in fact flying. Now it seems that everything is stopped, which means that any moment you can see Prime Minister Modi will be reaching here. Remember, Shivani, we've been talking about the welcome which Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to get here, because Prime Minister Modi himself is coming here. He's breaking all the protocol, and this happened very few occasions. Remember in 2015, 2017, 2020, and this year itself, there was Barack Obama in 2015, Sheikh Hasina 2017, Shinzo Abe in 2017, Donald Trump in 2020 in Ahmedabad, and in 2025, Sheikh Amir of Qatar. For all of them, Prime Minister Modi had come here and welcomed them. The personal touch was given, and this time around also Prime Minister Modi is coming here any moment from now. As you've been speaking about the landing of the flight of Russian President, that can also happen any moment from now, because Prime Minister Modi is also reaching here, and Putin's flight is also expected to land very shortly. Remember, 6:35 is the time when his flight is expected to land, and then straight away from here he will be heading to 7 LKM, which is the official residence.
We'll come back to you. About 7 minutes to go as far as the landing is concerned, and Siddhant is joining us at the Prime Minister's residence. Akansha Swaroop, my colleague, is also joining us from Bharat Mandapam. Siddhant, to you first. Preparations all set. What is expected as far as this meeting at the PM's residence today is concerned?
Well, Shivani, today's meeting is very, very significant, because this meeting only takes place when a country has a very special and strategic partnership with the other country. In fact, if we talk about Prime Minister Modi, then he has hosted only selected leaders at 7 LKM. It was President Putin, then Joseph Biden, JD Vance, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, once again, he will be hosting President Putin at his official residence. This is also in reciprocity, because last year when Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow, at that point President Putin hosted Prime Minister Modi at his private mansion. Both leaders spoke for about 2 hours, and this is in reciprocity, and this is the reason that from the airport President Putin will come straight to Prime Minister's residence, where both leaders will hold restrictive level talks. Perhaps we've been told that it will only be President Putin and Prime Minister Modi and the interpreters, nobody else. So it's an opportunity for both leaders to exchange perspectives on regional and global matters, also to discuss bilateral relationship, how to deepen the cooperation in the bilateral relationship when it comes to trade, defense, etc., etc. So today's meeting is very, very important, very, very significant, and this is happening ahead of 23rd India-Russia annual summit, which will take place tomorrow at Hyderabad House.
Yes, and what is expected at Bharat Mandapam? Let's take that to Akansha, who's joining us. Akansha, tell us more of what happens.
All right, so we are at Bharat Mandapam, and this is where the India-Russia Business Forum is happening. And today has been a very interesting day, because there was a delegation headed from the Indian side by our Commerce Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal. On the other hand, you also had a delegation.
All right, Akansha, interrupting you for a brief moment. Prime Minister's carcade is visible. This is happening at the Palam airport. So the Prime Minister's carcade has reached the Palam airport. We're just about 4 minutes to go as far as the scheduled landing of the President's plane in Palam airport is concerned. The Prime Minister has, as they say, broken protocol to receive his good friend Vladimir Putin at the airport. This is, of course, a gesture between two friends and two dignitaries, as much as two nations and two states. So we're going to be getting more visuals from the Palam airport again as well. Yes, Arun, any other updates? All right. We'll keep going back across to Arun in just a bit. Akansha, yes, you were saying something. All right. So the Prime Minister's carcade has reached. Arun is with us. Arun, we saw the Prime Minister's car reaching inside Palam Airport. So any minute now, we will be getting some visuals of the President's arrival.
Absolutely, absolutely. Inside the Palam Technical Airport, all the preparations are done. The entire airport is completely decked up. This is the grand welcome which Vladimir Putin is going to get. And we just saw the visuals. In fact, we are also playing those visuals right now. Prime Minister Modi's convoy has entered inside the Palam Technical Airport. And within few minutes from now, we are expecting that the flight of Vladimir Putin is also going to land in the Palam Technical Airport. And then, of course, as we've been discussing about this, that they will be straight away heading to 7 LKM. Remember, the distance from Palam Technical Airport to Prime Minister Modi's residence is barely 11 kilometers. So it will not take more than 15 minutes for both the leaders to reach there. And then, of course, at 7:30, the timing for the private dinner. But before that, of course, Shivani, we were discussing about the occasions when Prime Minister Modi, breaks the diplomatic protocol to welcome, a state head. We had seen earlier in 2015, starting with Barack Obama when he was the chief guest for the Republic Day. Then in 2017, Shinzo Abe, and Sheikh Hasina in 2020, it was Donald Trump in Ahmedabad when Prime Minister Modi reached at the airport. And this year itself, it was the Amir of Qatar when Prime Minister Modi was here. And today is again a day. And of course, Vladimir Putin is the one who's going to get that welcome by Prime Minister Modi himself. He'll of course be there at the airport when Putin will be coming down from his plane, and Prime Minister Modi will be there welcoming him. And then of course both the leaders. So these two, this visit of Putin is going to be very, very significant. Tomorrow's day, of course, is a jam-packed day for Vladimir Putin. He will be starting his tomorrow's day with a visit to Rajghat. Then of course the ceremonial welcome at the president's house, and then CEO level talks, and then the address to the CEOs, and then finally in the evening before he go back to Russia, there will be a banquet, presidential banquet for him. Shivani.
I want to go across to Sanjay Suri, my colleague, joining us from London as well. Sanjay, how is the Western media, the press, reporting, or the governments there reacting to the Russian president's visit?
Well, the Western media is necessarily hostile towards Putin, and they view with suspicion anything Putin does. They have been supporting his isolation, and of course supporting quite weakly and quite hopelessly. We've seen Putin going to the US, being welcomed by Trump in Alaska. He went to Beijing. He was welcomed there by Xi Jinping. Then now, of course, he's on his way to India, and on his way to Delhi. He'll be in Delhi very shortly. So the Western media and Western governments, and by Western we mean actually particularly European and Western European rather than the US, are very keen on strong tactics against Putin, and they really want his isolation. So they have supported the sanctions against India over the oil issue. They would not like to see any communication or contact between India and Russia. We saw the three ambassadors write a letter to a local newspaper about Putin just a few days back. So they are viewing this with suspicion and a deal of hostility. There is, of course, a lot of indication that India and Russia will move forward together on many fronts: defense, the economy, the oil issue, even BRICS, of course, coming up next year with India, as it said. A lot of movement, a lot of progress expected, but the European media, the European governments are not quite welcoming that.
Yes, on expected lines, but of course, as we've been discussing, India is not seeming too fettered as far as that reaction is concerned. Whether it will elicit a bigger reaction post any announcements from this bilateral, that remains to be seen. Some of our experts seem to be suggesting that, for both India and Russia, this visit is not so much about the war. and the shadow that it casts on this relationship, or for that matter on entire global politics right now. This is more about furthering our own interests, our bilateral interests in trade, tech, and also defense. But whether any major big ticket announcement will be made or not remains to be seen. There are certainly 10 pacts, 15 MOUs that are on the docket. But Pinak Ranjan continues to be with us. I wanted to understand from you too, of what message, if any, do you think PM Modi will be conveying on the Ukraine situation to President Vladimir Putin?
Well, I expect that in the one-to-one meeting and dinner, President Putin might be briefing Prime Minister Modi about the peace plan that is on the table. And a lot of that apparently is acceptable to Russia and to President Putin. But there may be some points that are not still being thrashed out. As you know, the American delegation was discussing this before Mr. Putin left for New Delhi. So that could be one factor. And the second would be, as we know from within the system, that if there are disagreements on one or two crucial things, they are bumped up to this level. And then the two leaders get together, they discuss it, and then they either reach an agreement or they say, okay, we will talk about it more later. That's the kind of thing that happens in these meetings. So there will be a very fixed kind of agenda in the sense that there will be other issues to be discussed. Both sides might raise various issues.
Visuals of a ceremonial kind of arrival for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. His flight is about to land, and very soon we will be getting visuals of his arrival. But what we can, of course, confirm to our viewers is that the Prime Minister is at Palam Airport. His carcade has reached a while ago, and he will be there on the tarmac welcoming Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is Putin's most watched, most globally watched, talked about visit to India. He has, of course, visited India multiple times in the past, almost a dozen times. But this is one that is not just being watched out closely for both of these countries, but also for the entire world. So far, there haven't been any, eyebrow-raising responses per se, but it is not left to anybody's imagination what the West, particularly NATO countries, have to say and feel about India's red carpet to Vladimir Putin. My colleague Siddhant also continues to be with us. Siddhant, very quickly, even as we wait for those first visuals of the visiting president's arrival, what has been the response that you've been getting in the diplomatic circles in New Delhi ahead of this visit?
Well, Shivani, whenever these two leaders meet, there is always chatter, there's always comments coming from the Western influencers, journalists, things like that. In fact, last time around also when Prime Minister Modi was in Moscow, Western journalists wrote many articles, perhaps, exposing Russian invasion and writing against Russia, etc., etc. This time around, something very unusual happened where three envoys, German ambassador, British High Commissioner, and French ambassador wrote a piece on the Ukraine conflict and blamed Russia for it. They appreciated Prime Minister Modi's view, his efforts since the beginning of the war, but they criticized Russia, they blamed Russia for the conflict. Perhaps that piece has not been received well by the Indian government. In fact, sources in Ministry of External Affairs tell us that this is a very unusual practice. A country should not be advising the other country on how to keep relationship with the third country. So that was the message which was given by Ministry of External Affairs. In fact, Ministry has also taken note of that piece. In fact, the next day there was the piece in the newspaper from the Russian ambassador explaining the Russian reasons for launching this military operation in Ukraine.
Right.
So definitely, European world will be watching the developments very, very closely, Shivani. But also, given Prime Minister Modi's position from the very beginning, in 2022, he told President Putin that this is not an era of war. In fact, last year also, when Prime Minister was in Moscow, he told President Putin that children are
That
dying.
has been a consistent message as far as the Indian Prime Minister is concerned, and how much of that would be delivered this time around as well remains to be seen. And let me also go across to my colleague Akansha, because Akansha, while there is so much focus on the messaging that the Indian PM can do, the leaning, as they say, that the Indian PM can do on Vladimir Putin, the reality also is that these two countries have a lot to look forward to bilaterally, and that is also a focus during this visit.
Absolutely. There are two big bets right now, which is, of course, one of them being the defense partnership, the S-400s, the purchase of the Sukhoi 57, the fifth generation fighter jets. But having said that, that will also come with its own set of challenges. As I've been highlighting in 2018, when the first set of S-400s were purchased during the previous Trump administration, we were slapped with CAXA sanctions, which are meant to particularly address any defense procurements from Russia. So that is one key concern which India will have to address if it orders a new squadron for S-400, or even say in terms of transfer of technology. Technology transfer is something which Russia specializes in, and that's not the case when we look towards defense assistance when it comes from Western nations. The other big bet, Shivani, let's not forget, is financial digital transactions. We are looking towards bringing the rupee and ruble only so that there are no third-party mediations happening. We are currently at the Bharat Mandapam, where the India-Russia Business Forum has been happening, and I can tell you from what the Russian delegation has had to say and what our Commerce Minister Shri Piyush Goyal have had to say, that we are diversifying this trade partnership, one that will not be hinging alone on just energy purchases, which oil trade particularly, which is going to dip down to its lowest in the last 3 to 4 years this December. It's going to now involve pharmaceuticals, it's going to involve fertilizers, automobile parts, and all of that is looking up. In fact, I have with me a very young Medansh, who's just 17 years old, and he's the youngest member of FICCI. Just to quickly have it from Medansh. Medansh, what is it that the youth of India and Russia can look towards now that President Putin's making that state visit?
I find it really motivating to see how Russia...
I also want to go across to my colleague Sanjay Suri, who continues to be with us. Sanjay, want to understand from you, because you've been following it since the very start of the Ukraine war. The high-pitched... All right, let me go across to my colleague Arun Dhata first, because he's there at the Palam airport where all the action is right now. We have multiple sets of visuals, Arun, that have come in. The Prime Minister reaching, there is a ceremonial guard of honor of sorts that is being prepared on the tarmac. Tell us more of what's happening.
Well, that's right. We have earlier shown that Prime Minister Modi had entered the Palam Technical Airport, and in fact he's inside. As we've been discussing about the preparations inside the airport, completely it is decked up to welcome the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let me quickly show you a glimpse of the Palam Technical Airport gate. There you can see now. In fact, it seems that the traffic movement is going to be stopped in a short while from. This is the gate that you see. You will be getting in a short while from now the live visuals of both the leaders coming out. And interestingly, Shivani, we'll have to see whether both
the Prime Minister is there on the tarmac. These are live visuals coming in. His car is there. The security is there. He's now waiting inside his vehicle as the Russian President Vladimir Putin's plane lands. We are being told that plane has landed. So both of them are going to be greeting each other very, very shortly. The Prime Minister is exiting his car. And could we see both of them riding to his residence together? I think that is something that could be looked forward to, because in the past, the ride that both Putin and Modi shared became the talk of the town. So could something that be repeated on the streets of New Delhi? We'll wait and see. But these are fresh visuals coming in of the Prime Minister waiting to embrace, I'm guessing, his friend Putin. There could very well be a hug on cards and maybe, who knows, a shared ride. But these are, of course, visuals that are going to be watched very closely across the world. India is not pulling any stops as far as the welcome for Vladimir Putin is concerned. It is unfettered and unconcerned of the global eye on this visit to India. Ceremonial red carpet that has been rolled out for Vladimir Putin. Lots on the agenda, but what is really center stage is the friendship that these two nations have. And that friendship is not going anywhere, pressure from the West or NATO or not. That is going to be the signaling that both of these leaders are going to be doing as Vladimir Putin lands in India for his 30-hour visit. We are being told he has landed. Prime Minister is walking towards a certain direction now. We'll try and get a more clearer visual of what is happening there, but it seems like there could be a meeting inside. Let's see. He's gone inside some building. We'll see exactly what happens. But what we're getting to know is that President Putin's plane has landed at Palam Airport for his visit. The Prime Minister is there at the airport, almost on the tarmac, to receive his friend. And we're waiting to see exactly what transpires between these two leaders. They're going to go straight, mind you, to Prime Minister's residence, 7 LKM. And they're going to have a very private conversation there just between the two leaders. And there's going to be a dinner for the visiting dignitary at the PM's residence before the ceremonial activities begin tomorrow and all of the bilateral work happens tomorrow. There's going to be a quiet, very private meeting between the two leaders this evening. Could they share a ride together? We'll wait and see. Those pictures went viral, mind you, when they were sitting in a car together last time around. And this would be a great photo op if it happens once again. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi being there in person at the airport to receive Vladimir Putin, that in itself is, as they say, quote-unquote, breaking protocol. This is not how it's supposed to be. But Prime Minister has done this in the past when he wants to signal not just India's interest in a particular country, but also his personal relationship with the very many dignitaries that he has gone to the airport for. It has happened not just in New Delhi, but even in other states, in Gujarat, for example. And Siddhant, my colleague, also is continuing to be with us. Siddhant, any moment now, any moment, I think we could get visuals of the two leaders meeting.
Well, that's right, Shivani. In fact, you were mentioning about Prime Minister, an expert in extending special gestures. And whenever these two leaders meet, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, there is something very unexpected that will happen. The bonhomie embraces, the hugs between the two leaders. In fact, if we talk about the Tianjin summit, Shivani, the way President Putin and Prime Minister Modi went together to meet President Xi Jinping, and then all the three leaders, had a brief conversation ahead of the plenary session. Then, as you rightly pointed out, right after the Tianjin summit, both Prime Minister Modi and President Putin drove in one car to the hotel for the bilateral talks. So this relationship, this bonhomie is very, very special. And also, Shivani, all this while, since the start of this conflict, many times President Putin has briefed Prime Minister Modi on Russia's position, on how Russia is going to pursue peace, the efforts Russia is giving for peace in Ukraine, etc., etc. So, there is definitely a comfort level between the two leaders. There is definitely a very good understanding between the two leaders. And this is the reason that last time around also when Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow, there was restrictive level talks between the two leaders. In fact, both leaders exchanged perspectives on Ukraine conflict. And also, Shivani, because of this comfort level only, Prime Minister Modi is the only world leader to be sitting next to President Putin and telling him, stop the war, children are dying. So this is exactly what Prime Minister Modi said when he visited Moscow last year in July. So that's the level of comfort. And Russia is always open to discuss anything related to Ukraine conflict or global scenarios with India. So, this to celebrate this bonhomie, to celebrate this relationship, this kinship, Prime Minister Modi has once again extended this special gesture of going to the airport by breaking all protocols and to receive his friend.
This is not the first time. This is not the first time, Siddhant. This is Anand here, and good evening to our viewers as we continue on into the right stand. whether or not will these two leaders take the right stand in the interest of global peace, harmony, and of course the global south. More importantly, what will be the interest of Bharat and Russia? That's the big question, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, like he did for the Saudi Arabia prince, like he did for Sheikh Hasina in the past, like he has done for special leaders, he has for Donald Trump. He has gone there to show to the world that Vladimir Putin and Bharat's equation with Russia is equally important for Bharat as compared to any of the other nations, be it in the friendly neighborhood or be it from the West. But this is a special gesture. Let's remember, Arun Dhanta is there at the airport. We also have Siddhant joining us right from outside 7 LKM, that's where they will actually make their way. We must remember at Tianjin, there was a very special gesture that was extended by President Putin, where he waited for 10 minutes in his Aurus Senat, and then he brought in and hosted Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his vehicle, in his security vehicle, and they drove around for an hour. The world watched when Prime Minister Narendra Modi sat inside President Putin's car, and President Putin actually waited for 10 minutes because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was held up at that time. Now, these are fresh visuals coming through. The red carpet has been laid out. Prime Minister Narendra Modi may walk up right up to the front along with the Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. He will be there, and President Putin will step out of the special aircraft, the presidential aircraft. Now, we will have, that's Prime Minister Narendra Modi getting off the vehicle and greeting the people present. There is a special guard of honor right at the tarmac, and President Putin will get out of the aircraft any moment now, and we should have those pictures. This is indeed a big moment, and Siddhant and Arun Dhanta with us. Siddhant, weigh in on this. The Bharat Dosti, Russia Dosti, the President Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi connection and them knowing each other goes back to 2001. Where we have pictures of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, perhaps as Chief Minister of Gujarat at that time, accompanying Prime Minister Vajpayee to Moscow. And at that time, it was Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. Boris Yeltsin was the president. They were sitting there signing documents, and Prime Minister Modi was present. So they go back a long way, more than 2.5 decades. Their association, their knowing each other, their friendship. And perhaps it's now ready to take it to the next level, where they have hinted at a no-limits partnership, where both nations will be committed to helping each other prosper.
Well, yes, that's right, Anand. In fact, the sources are also telling us that wait for a few more surprises by tomorrow. So we could expect, some more surprises coming our way from Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, because till today afternoon we were expecting EMS Jaishankar to be going to receive President Putin. But, by evening it was CNN News 18 which broke the story first, that Prime Minister Modi will be going to the airport by breaking protocols to receive President Putin. Also, Anand, if you allow me, I would like to share one incident. There was a bilateral meeting which was going on between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi long back, and there was some mic issue, some translation issues. So President Putin immediately intervened and said that we don't need translators, we understand each other's language very well. So that's the level of comfort, that's the friendship and the understanding between the two leaders. And when President Putin said that, Prime Minister Modi also smiled. As I said, that there's going to be more surprises. There's going to be more gestures, unexpected gestures, which we could expect tomorrow in the national capital when these two leaders are going to meet. And this is the first visit of President Putin to India in 5 years. Today, both leaders will have a private meeting. It will only be President Putin and Prime Minister Modi in room, along with the translators, and perhaps they are going to discuss global scenarios.
That meeting, Siddhant, actually begins also, even as they depart the airport. For all you know, they may just travel in the same car. Whether just checking with Arun Dhanta. Arun, did you also see President Putin's cavalcade, the Aurus Senat, which has been brought down specifically for his visit here and for his local travel? Is that already inside the airport?
Is it a possibility that the two leaders may actually share the same vehicle on their way out, on the way to Lok Kalyan Marg?
Well, Anand, it's going to be very, very interesting to see as to what happens, how both the leaders travel, whether they will be a redux moment, what we witnessed in Tianjin in China when President Putin waited for Prime Minister Modi and then both of them traveled in the same car. Will today again be a day when those scenes will be once again seen here? But as we are seeing that Prime Minister Modi is already inside, and we are also told that Vladimir Putin has also reached here. And Anand, let me quickly tell you that the distance from here, the Palam Technical Airport to the 7LKM, the official residence of Prime Minister Modi, is 11 kilometers. So the moment they come out of this gate, if you can see right now from our camera on our screens right now, is 15 to 20 minutes. 7:30 is the time for the dinner. And of course, as we've been speaking to people inside the airport, they're saying that the entire airport is glittering, completely decked up, and Prime Minister Modi, of course, ensuring, because he reached way before time inside the airport, and in fact, took a stalk around how's the preparation for the welcome of Vladimir Putin. Remember, as you've been also discussing about this, there have been very few instances when Prime Minister Modi himself had come to the airport, and this year we had seen when Amir of Qatar had arrived, Prime Minister Modi was here, and in 2020 in Ahmedabad for Donald Trump, in 2017 for Sheikh Hasina and for Shinzo Abe, and in 2015 for Barack Obama when he was the chief guest of Republic Day. So today again is the day, and that shows that how important that person is for you, who is coming to your country, and you are himself going there at the airport and waiting for him actually to arrive, and then of course the entire delegation along with you.
That
is
10-minute
there to
wait,
welcome. So
that
that's
10-minute wait will go a long way. That will not be forgotten. That 10-minute wait that President Putin made in Tianjin for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to join him inside his vehicle in his car will not be forgotten. And perhaps this is also a signal to the world. We'll try and see if we have our guests this evening on the right stand to understand the import of these pictures. We should also have the live visuals coming. These are from just a short while ago. The preparations are at full tilt, and there will be the bonhomie. There will be where do they meet and greet each other. Both leaders, will they break protocol, and will one invite the other into their cavalcade, and will they travel together, and do the conversations already then begin? Abhijit Iyer Mitra with us. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, big messaging to the world that Russia is an important partner. The West may want to sanction it left, right and center and lampoon it, but Bharat stands steadfast, just like Russia has in the past with Bharat. Those are pictures of President Putin's aircraft landing. Its touchdown has happened and the taxi will happen. These are first pictures coming on CNN News 18. So the presidential plane is on the tarmac. There it is. And then it will just exit the runway, make its way to the tarmac area where officials of both the Prime Minister and the President of Russia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's officials, and of course the Russian delegation and the Russian officials, they're all present there for this welcome. The red carpet will be laid, and then President Putin will alight. But Abhijit Iyer Mitra, as we have these pictures, your thoughts?
Remember, this relationship, it is 70, 80 years old. They have always given us a veto on demand, except for that short period when Andrei Kozyrev was foreign minister. Now, Andrei Kozyrev is a rat who's now in the West sitting and talking about sanctioning Russia and things like that. So we should leave that aside as an aberration. The rest of the time, when have the Russians not come through for us? We used to keep getting moral lectures from the West, when the West had no problem supporting Pakistan with arms and sometimes sending the fleet against us to thwart our attempts at disciplining Pakistan. Russia stood by us. Now, it is not just historical value, Anand. We need to remember we can never allow China and Russia to come together. We have to keep Russia on our good side for our own interest, current interest right now. This is not past baggage we're talking about. This is present geopolitical interest that we have to keep in mind. And this is something that is current. Now, there is also things now like the S-400. I'm very certain there is an S-400 or an S-500 purchase that is going to happen. Sukhoi 27, Sukhoi 57, I don't know. Maybe, may not be. But the relationship is good. It is clear. The dynamics, the geopolitical dynamics of it are 100% solid. Because remember, Russia also can't be stuck with a monopsony market in China. It needs alternative markets for its higher value goods and things like that, which India provides.
True. Ambassador Shashank is with us, former Foreign Secretary of India, and also Surya Jayanti, non-resident senior fellow, Atlantic Council with us. My namaste and Jai Hind. Thank you for your time. Shashankji, your thoughts? How critical, how important is this visit from both Bharat and also Russia's perspective? Shashankji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, your thoughts, please. Namaste. Anand here. Ji.
Namaste, Anand. No, I didn't hear your question. I thought you were asking someone else.
No, the question was to you.
Yes.
The importance of this visit from both Russia's perspective and also Bharat's perspective. The timing also.
It's an extremely important visit. It's taking place after 4 years. And when there have been signs that America is trying to bring an end to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but it is finding that, firstly, the Europeans are not on board. Secondly, the American arms manufacturers are also not on board. So there is some kind of a difficulty within the American setup. So with this as the background, Russia and India are both trying to continue strengthening their relationships. This is a relationship of total mutual trust, and which has been built up over a long period of time. And the kind of technology transfers which have taken place between our two countries, they have led to a new situation where we have been talking about a joint production, joint R&D, and investments in both places. So I think these are the issues which have been talked about. Now we need to implement them. And I think keeping in mind India's Atmanirbharta campaign, we should really request this time Russia to do the technology transfer as much as possible to India.
Well, with respect to the S-500s, there is conversation around technology transfer. The S-500s are important in terms of futuristic capabilities. There's conversation around technology transfer and manufacture in Bharat of the Sukhoi 57 too. But will we get there? Because we're still expecting 2 batteries of the S-400s. That's already part of the deal. Surya Jayanti, will it be largely defense, or will there be another geopolitical import of this visit too?
This is a hugely important visit, geopolitically speaking. I think the broader background here is, and I say this speaking from Washington, D.C., and as a former U.S. diplomat assigned to Ukraine, the broader background here is that it is not all about the United States all the time. And I think it is easy for Washington often to forget that there are countries out there that have their own long-standing relationships, their own long-standing priorities that diverge from the United States' geopolitical and economic priorities. So what Washington is watching unfold is exactly that situation now between Russia and India. And what Washington wants is, of course, a big part of the dance that's going to go on, because Modi is in a position where he needs to balance both his interests with Moscow and also his interests with Washington, D.C. But there are many aspects of this that the United States has no role in. And so I think we will see as much of a strengthening of the relationship as possible between India and Russia from this. I think it will be couched very much in rhetoric of global stability. I think India will be quite careful to make sure that it isn't saying anything inflammatory to the United States. But we are watching a little bit of a global power realignment, and the Russia, India, China shift of power from Western capitals to these Eastern countries is something that I think is rapidly unfolding, and that the Russian war in Ukraine has played a big part of. And then most broadly, or at least with respect to the balance of power between Russia and India, I think Russia needs India a lot more than India needs Russia right now. And so I think this is an excellent opportunity for India to secure some concessions in defense, some contracts in energy, manufacturing, as well as broader strategic gains.
Well, Bharat has a 70 billion import bill and just a 4 billion export bill to Russia right now. So that trade deficit needs to be balanced a bit. Nikita Menkovich, director of the Eurasian Analytical Club, is also with us. My namaste. Thank you for your time. Your thoughts on this? There are 10 GOMs that are supposed to be signed. That's not necessarily defense. What do you think will be the key focus areas, Nikita, as far as President Putin's perspective is concerned? Because there have been some placatory tones post the Witkoff meet from the Americans. There has been some indications from Mr. Peskov also, where he said that we just need a sovereign guarantee from Ukraine that they will not join NATO, and then we can immediately cease fire. Will that conversation also happen between these two leaders? Is Bharat playing a role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Nikita.
First of all, I'd like to underline that there is no Russian-Ukrainian conflict. It is a Ukrainian problem, Ukrainian conflict, in which Russian and Ukrainian army fighting against a puppet government in Kiev. They're fighting for those land and for those freedom. That's what it is about. Of course, in this case, Russia is dealing with United States, who established and controlled so-called Ukrainian government of Mr. Zelensky. The only thing we want our land back. We want freedom for our people. We want guarantees that no new war will be produced by United States and NATO on the Ukraine territory. Of course, we doesn't want to see there NATO troops, American soldiers, American occupation. That's all about. Please don't talk about so-called Russia-Ukrainian conflict. A lot of Ukrainian people fighting against American mercenaries in Russian troops. Russian and Ukrainian people are allies against NATO aggression. You should remember it.
It's also about the narratives and perspectives from either side. And one of the things perhaps that Bharat can learn is how to shed the Western narrative and to try and pursue a narrative that is important to the country. The Russians seem to be doing that very focused and ably, and have negotiated a huge gamut of sanctions and financial distress to continue to sustain themselves. But Farwa Amer, Director of South Asia Initiatives, Asia Society Policy Institute, would you agree with Nikita, Surya, or would you have a different perspective itself on the import of this visit, the connect between these two leaders, and more importantly, the Bharat-Russia dosti? Can this move to that no limits description that was hinted at by Mr. Peskov?
Thank you for having me. I do agree with what Surya said. It is important for India to value and to keep continuing to support its partnerships both with Russia and with the United States. Of course, this has been a challenging year for the US-India relationship. There's the trust deficit that has developed, and this visit is coming at a very delicate time because of the US sanctions and the tariffs and the trade deal that is on the table between the United States and India. And there's been a decrease in the crude oil imports that had seen a massive increase and was something notable for the United States between India and Russia. So now when this visit is going to happen, it's going to be one where India would want to make sure that the overall relationship, despite these differences that have emerged because of the sort of curbing the oil imports in light of the US sanctions and to comply with some of the US demands, and in terms of securing its relationship with the West, it will be to also make sure that the relationship with Russia stays stable and steady. One of the biggest narratives coming out of India is to expand this relationship and take it beyond defense and oil, and to try and make it more broadly economic, sort of one there's where there is room for more technological cooperation. There is room to do more on the civil nuclear cooperation side and collaboration side. There's one labor mobility agreement that's likely going to be signed as well. So, to engage more from a people-to-people perspective. So how can you take this relationship and make it a little bit broader to kind of maintain that status of this privileged and strategic partnership? Of course, this has been a testing time for India because this year has sort of laid out how much strategic flexibility there is for India in this rapidly evolving geopolitical order that we are seeing, not just with how India is engaging with Russia in light of what's coming out of the West and Western policy uncertainty towards India, but also how it's kind of stepped up even so cautiously in terms of its engagement with China. When Prime Minister Modi was in China after 7 years for the SCO, that event in itself also had reactions come out of Washington. So there is room, however, to say to kind of make sure that both relationships can somehow remain in parallel and do well if there's progress on the Ukraine negotiations, peace negotiations.
Well, there may be territorial disagreements. There would also be an adversarial thought process between China's machinations under the CCP and the PLA vis-a-vis Bharat. But when a nation like and under the leadership of Donald Trump tries to weaponize trade, then can other nations set aside their territorial ambitions and look at how they can use economics, they can use trade to perhaps defang bullies? Is that a possibility, Shashankji? But if it comes to Bharat and Russia, then there has to be a rupee-ruble agreement. Because you can't base it on the dollar if Russia continues to be sanctioned and Bharat continues to be threatened with sanctions if it continues to buy oil. Although it's hypocritical that nations in Europe, America itself continues to trade with Russia, be it fertilizers, oil, energy, etc.
Yeah, I agree with you that America has been putting unilateral tariffs on India, which is quite unfair. But India has to see that, well, they have not put these tariffs on China, Europe, and on itself. And therefore, we have to ensure that whatever oil and other energy resources we buy from Russia, we should use it for ourselves, number one. Secondly, we should go for technology transfer, because that will be strengthening the Atmanirbharta campaign of India. Thirdly, as you said, that we have to make arrangement for rupee-ruble trading directly, whichever way it is possible, either by more investments by Russia and India, by choosing a larger gamut of imports from India,